the three group appearances are just as equally important and of interest. And the reason being is because group appearances rule out the possibilities of hallucinations. Now, why is that? As far as I know, the most recent comprehensive study on hallucinations was published in 2008 in a book called Hallucinations, The Science of Idiosyncratic Perception by Elman and Laurie and published by the American Psychological Association. You can get it online for probably about $50, $60. Now in there are several kinds of hallucinations they mention. 6 different ways in which we typically experience a hallucination. One is an auditory hallucination. Now, hallucination is a false perception of something that it's not really there. So, an auditory hallucination, you would hear something, but there really wasn't any sound. Or a visual hallucination, you see something, but it's not really there. A gustatory hallucination, you taste something. An olfactory hallucination, you smell something. A kinesthetic hallucination, where we've all probably experienced these at some point, where you're sleeping at night and you wake up because you feel like you're falling off of a building or something. That's a kinesthetic hallucination. Or a tactile hallucination. How many of you have a smartphone of some sort? And when you first got it, a couple of times you thought it was vibrating, you took it out and you looked at it, it was a false alarm. It hadn't vibrated. That was a false perception of something that didn't really happen. That is a tactile hallucination. So see, you don't have to be weird in order to experience a hallucination.
But it helps.
What's that? Yeah, but it helps. Now, hallucinations are typically experienced in one of those 6 modes. Sometimes you can have a combination of modes, but that's usually in the case of you're on drugs or you're schizophrenic. Other than that, most people experience a hallucination in a single mode. Now, one other thing is that the group most likely to experience a hallucination, or I should say the type of person most likely to experience a hallucination, are senior adults bereaving the loss of a loved one. And on multiple studies done, the results come out pretty similar, and that is about 50% of senior adults bereaving the loss of a loved one experience a hallucination. The majority of them only sense the person's presence in the room. 39% of those feel they sense the person's presence. They don't see them, they don't hear them, they don't sense them in any of those 6 ways I just mentioned. So I don't know what kind of a hallucination you would call that. But 39% sense that that person is in the room somehow. They just don't see him or perceive him in any way. So that's roughly 20% of all senior adults bereaving the loss of a loved one. Visual hallucinations comprise about 14% of all those who are experiencing a hallucination, the senior adults bereaving the loss of a loved one, or 7% of all senior adults bereaving the loss of a loved one. So you can see that even the group that's most likely to experience a hallucination, only 7% experience a visual hallucination. Now think about this for a moment. The 3 group appearances, to the 12, to more than 500, and to all the apostles, which appears to be a group a little bit, have more than just the 12 in there. These are 3 group appearances. Now, and it says he appeared to them. So we're talking about a visual. It would have to be a visual hallucination. So he appeared to the 12. Now I know that Judas is dead, but apparently this became a nickname for that inner group of 12 disciples. Just like you had the Pac-10. Is that what it was called, the Pac-10 or something like that? And now they've expanded it to, what, 12 now? But even when they had 11 and 12 for a while, they were still calling it the Pac-10. You'd call it the Fab Four even after John Lennon had been killed. So the 12, they had this nickname, and even after Judas is gone, they still refer to them as the 12. And then later on, Matthias was elected to take Judas's place. So you still have the 12, and he had seen the Lord, because that was one of the qualifications to be an apostle. You had to see the risen Jesus. Now, he appeared to the 12. Now think about this for a moment. We have a group appearance here for the 12 apostles. What's the probability? I know grief isn't involved here because I'm, all right, let's say I'm here. You're all perceiving me right now because I'm here, right? Now, what if I'm not here? What's the probability that you are going to experience a visual hallucination of me? You're not grieving, but let's just say 7%. What's the probability that all three of you, plus you, will experience a visual hallucination of me? Well, it would be 7% times 7% times 7% times 7%. I don't know, that's not cubed, but what do you call it when it's
Squared.
Huh?
Square twice, count.
Yeah. To the fourth.
Yeah, to the fourth, yeah. 7% to the 0.07 to the fourth power.
Power to the fourth.
So you can see the probabilities now are really getting low. What happens when we talk about 12? What happens when we talk about more than 500 at one time? And we're not talking about 7%, we're talking about 100%. 7% is the highest group, and yet a group hallucination on the part of the apostles would require not 7%, but an unthinkable 100%, experiencing a visual hallucination. Oh, by the way, simultaneously, too. It wouldn't be like now, and then maybe some of you experience it later on your own, but as a group, 100% of the group members experience that visual hallucination of me simultaneously. Oh, by the way, and the content's the same, it's of me. And like when we're talking about the resurrection, though, it would be of Jesus. And it wouldn't be of an angel. It wouldn't be of the guards coming from the door, because remember, they had fear, too. Not only grief, but they had fear. Why wouldn't some visualize the guards coming to get them? Or an angel? Or maybe seeing Jesus in heaven? But it resulted in them thinking that Jesus had been raised physically, bodily from the dead. The content must have been so concrete and similar that they all thought that they were seeing the same thing. You think about how wildly improbable that is. 100% having a visual hallucination of Jesus simultaneously. I think it takes more faith to believe that it was a hallucination than that God had raised Jesus from the dead. Because that goes against a hallucination, group hallucination goes against everything we know from the mental health profession. And there wasn't just one appearance like that, not two, but 3 that are reported in the early kerygma. That's pretty cool stuff. And remember, hallucinations don't account for the appearance to Paul because he's not grieving. So you've got all kinds of problems with the hallucination hypothesis. And that, by the way, the hallucination hypothesis is the leading hypothesis given by skeptics on the resurrection today. So we can see that our faith is really strongly grounded. We've got the fact that Paul knew the apostles. We've got the fact that he was teaching what they are teaching. We can certify that as being true. And we can actually get one of the teachings for certain of what the apostles were teaching. That Jesus died, was buried, was raised, and that he appeared, that there were at least 6 resurrection appearances, 3 to individuals. We have eyewitness testimonies there. 3 to group appearances, and those group appearances rule out hallucinations. At the end of the day, things aren't looking too well for the skeptical mode, the skeptical alternative there. I get gets me excited about the resurrection.